Rob Rast is a co-founder of FLX Bikes. It's an electric bike company responsible for one of the largest and most successful IndieGoGo campaigns in history for their sleek, stylish, and affordable electric bike, controversially named the Babymaker. I have a chance to sit down with Rob to understand the origin story of FLX, as well as hear out his perspective and mentality on what makes FLX the success that it is. Enjoy. Rob, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Eric, thanks for having me on. It's an absolutely gorgeous day, and we're inside, so let's wrap this thing up and get outside.
I know it. I just took a walk to grab a coffee, and I didn't realize, being in these caves, how beautiful it was. So I hear you on that one. With that, I kind of want to jump right in just to dig into your backstory and everything you've accomplished. I've listened, I've done a little bit of research on you, and so I'm really excited to dig into it. One of the things that I think, it doesn't take much if you talk to somebody and hear their origin story or maybe the first 20 years. I always think it kind of projects their life forward, and you've got a really interesting one. A pivotal moment seemed like when you chose to drop out of college and move to China. Can you walk us through the motivation for that?
That was a big one, and I always appreciate when people do their research. That's awesome. So I actually had a mentor in high school. I met this guy at a church camp when I was like 13, 14 years old. I had my cabin where we had like the one church leader in the cabin, and it's like read the Bible and get to bed by 9. And then these other guys at the other cabin were coming back with notes like how to talk to girls, how to be a man, how to make money. And I'm in the wrong cabin, man. So I snuck into the other cabin that night and met what would become my mentor. His name is Scott Powell. Awesome dude. He owned these FBOs, basically, airports around Sacramento. Had all the private jets, success, beautiful wife, family. I'm like, that's the life I want to have when I'm that age. And got to see him once a week or so for like Bible study, but it was really, let's talk about how to be a man, how to talk to girls, etc. And every time I met with this guy, he would tell us, if you want to be successful, you've got to learn Chinese and go to China. And I'm like, well, you're not Chinese. You've never been to China. You don't even speak Chinese. But he had some serious foresight on him. And after hearing that, I would just see China everywhere. It was in the news. The Beijing Olympics were going on. I went to UC Irvine, where it's like 50% Chinese people there. My roommates were learning Chinese. I'm like, okay, the universe is trying to say something. I started learning it for a year or two. And 2 years into my college career, I was doing great. I was in mechanical engineering, loved it. It was a ton of fun. He calls me up. He says, hey, I know you've been learning Chinese. I think it's time for you to go check out China. And I'm like, well, I'm in school. He says, all right, if you go over there, I'll buy your plane ticket. And it was an offer he couldn't refuse. So bought the one-way ticket and flew over to China.
Wow. Well, it's always great to meet mentors like that. It sounds like he had quite a few life skills to teach you, not just around business, but around growing up and all that. I would be remiss if I didn't follow up with this, given that I know my parents are wondering, and they're listeners to the podcast. I've got a bit of a similar story. I took a 10-year gap between high school and college.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess my question there is, how did your parents react when you said, "Hey, I wanted to drop out of a mechanical engineering degree"?
They were not terribly thrilled about that, for sure. My dad was like, okay, interesting. They were paying for a part of my college as well. So to have invested that money and then see me just walk away like that, I totally understand. My mom definitely didn't like it, but I told them, this is something I got to do. I got to find out what it's about. I'm lucky that I'm American and we kind of have that freedom to do that. But in China, when the parents say no, that's a hard no.
And at that time, right, I think we would have been, it sounds like we're in the neighborhood of 2009. I know gap years are perhaps more common now, but back then, you're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit.
So I was a second year student. I just completed the second year and some summer school and applied for a leave of absence with the school. And so they gave me a piece of paper that said you can come back within 10 years and continue your education. So I'd had a pretty solid plan B. I wasn't planning on staying in China for so long. I thought, hey, a year, check it out, come back, finish my degree. But I also wanted to see, hey, what's going to happen?
I like it. Yeah, that's also a great way to sell it. It sounds like in both of our cases, we more or less came around full circle. So I perhaps the parents are okay with how things turned out.
They're thrilled now. Yeah.
Right on. Now, when you went to China, what were your plans? What were your expectations? What was that like?
I had zero plans, zero expectations. I literally, like, when this idea started coming up, I just spent a couple weeks like, okay, what am I going to do? Just go to China. This was my only task. Go to China and figure it out. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any jobs lined up, no school. So I looked at a map of China and I'm like, looking in the bottom kind of right corner of China, southeast China. This looks similar to Newport Beach, which is where I was living at the time. I like the beach. I like to surf. Maybe I'll just go there and do some surfing. And so I bought this one-way ticket there, show up, and I'll never forget my first day. I took the ferry in from Hong Kong to Zhuhai, get in a taxi, and was like, hey, take me to a hotel. He does, and we drive along the beach, and my jaw kind of dropped because the water was all brown and yellow. And I'm like, oh, I was not expecting that. Like, I'm thinking Newport Beach, but I wouldn't even want to swim in that. So that reality slapped me pretty hard. I think it's where like the Yangtze River comes out and there's a lot of mud in that water. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was super dirty.
Gotcha. And then now from there, was your, I guess, main ambition to travel around to see China, to set up a business already? Or what was your thought process?
Again, I didn't think that far ahead. It was really just like, okay, buy the ticket, get there and see what happens. Like sometimes you just got to flip the card table and see where stuff lands and see what's going to happen. So I got there. I was staying in a hotel for a couple days, and then to save money, find an apartment. I actually got involved with this. I was walking around looking for an apartment, right? And I'm asking people in horrible Chinese, hey, where's there an apartment I can rent? And the security guard at this apartment place was like, oh, there's this lady that's subletting part of her apartment. You can live with her. I'm like, great, I can live with a Chinese lady. We'll speak Chinese every day. That's going to be perfect for the education. And like day one, she cooks for me. She's really sweet. Day two, she's like, let me give you a massage. And there's a lot of mosquitoes here. It's in South China. I come home from the bar that night. I'd had a good drink, tried to make some friends, come back. And she's like, my mosquito net's broken. I have to share. It's like a tent above the bed, right? I have to get in your mosquito net with you tonight. And I was like, what? I'm like, no, that's not happening. It's like 40-year-old Chinese lady. And I was like, you can have my net. I don't need it tonight. You just take mine. And then she flips out and starts screaming at me, yelling. And the next day, it's crazy. She's like, she took my passport. She's like, you owe me all this money, blah, blah, blah. She just freaked out. And I had to just pay this woman off and get out of there. I paid her like a month and a half of rent for 3 days and got out of there. That was my first living experience in China.
I love those stories, though. They sort of stuff like that. I think traveling is overwhelmingly positive. From listening to some previous experiences of yours, it sounds like you're the same case, but it's not always that way. And a lot of times you kind of have to deal with the situation and get around it. Sounds like that was the case there.
Yeah, but they're also, like, looking back, they're the funniest and the best memories.
Absolutely.
Came out unharmed.
Those are the memories you always go to.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as far as, because you were planning, or it sounds like maybe not so much planning, but intending to stay there for a period of time. How long were you in China in total?
I was there about 9 years in total.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I started there in Zhuhai, China, and I'd just hop on a random bus every day and see where it takes me, try and make some friends on the bus, just speak Chinese and really just immerse myself in the culture. I bought this little motorcycle I was riding around, and I wasn't learning Chinese like as quickly as I wanted to. I didn't really have very many friends there. So I linked up with two of my friends, my roommates from college, that had done an official exchange program with a school. They're paying a lot of money. They're paying U.S. tuition to go to Chinese school in Beijing. And I applied to that school just privately and got in to do like a semester there and do an official Chinese language program at Beijing. So I met up with them, joined them there, did a semester, and then summer came along and I had this motorcycle and it was beautiful out. And I'm like, I'm out of here, guys. And I threw a backpack on the back of the motorcycle and just started going south to see where it would go.
Wow. And you just wanted to travel around, see more of China? Was that the intent?
Yeah. See more of China. I would like pick the next major city, send out some couch surfing requests. Have you used that before?
I have. Absolutely.
Yeah. This is back before Airbnb. It was awesome. It was like free Airbnb. And met some interesting people on that for sure. Made it about 2,000 miles down the coast of China before the police got my motorcycle. And then I started hitchhiking from there.
How'd the police get your motorcycle? What was the situation?
I parked it. I was on this little island called Xiamen Island. And I went out to have some dinner with my couch surfing hosts and came out and the motorcycle was gone. I thought it got stolen, but the security guard was like, the police took it and they confiscated it. So I went into the police station and I went across the street first to like the 7-Eleven and I bought a bunch of tea and I come in with this bag of tea. Like, let me talk to your police chief. I got something for you. I heard you guys like tea. Trying to bribe him to get my motorcycle back. And he just looks at me. He's like, are you trying to bribe me right now with 4 bottles of tea? Like, no, it's just so hot out here. And I did not get the motorcycle back. They got the motorcycle. They said it was because it had fake plates and you have no insurance and no license and everything wrong in the book. But in China, it's like kind of like the Wild West. Anything goes. You just buy a motorcycle and ride it.
I hear you on that one, and it's always a delicate situation. I've been pulled over in Mexico City years ago, and it's more of a conversation, right? Of like, they call it a fine, but it's very much borders on bribe fine. I don't know. You solve it right on the spot. You don't want to go to the police station. That's kind of the rule of thumb there.
Totally.
Right. Now, as you're kind of moving around and I know, obviously you've got this kind of entrepreneurial spirit as well as a pretty ambitious guy. Over time, are you getting the sense that, you're not achieving what you want to achieve, or what was the prompt to start? I think it was I would call it like a rice wine company. Was your initial foray?
Yeah, great question. So the travels brought me down to a place called Hainan, China. I did this hitchhiking loop and ended up in this little island. They call it the Hawaii of China. It's a really hot little island place. And I did another semester of school there. While I was doing that, I met this random Chinese guy in a parking lot who's like, he came out of a Mercedes, nice looking car. He comes out and he's like, hey, I'm looking for an interpreter or something like that to help me in my business. And I'm like, Chinese mentor, man. I need a Chinese mentor. I want to learn business and I want to learn Chinese. So I started going around with this guy, for free, basically doing an internship, just going to business meetings. And he turned out to be a just totally full of shit. But one of his businesses was this rice liquor company, and they manufactured rice wine for like $1 or $2. It tasted like bubble gum and gasoline. It was disgusting. 56% alcohol, but it came in a pretty bottle, and they would sell it for $60 to restaurants and private people. And I'm like, you could sell this crap for $60. That's a good markup. How about some good California wine? Like, we got some of that where I'm from. And that's when the light bulb went off, and I'm thinking, I'm going to be the Bill Gates of wine in China. And I spent the next 2 years working on that.
Wow. I would imagine trying to import California wine into China was a monumental task.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's insane. In America, when you want to start a business, 5 minutes online, $200, and you've got your business, everything you need to go into business. In China, however, I had spent the better part of 9 months working full time with somebody I hired, by the way, like an agent who's supposed to do it all for me. But I'm still doing all the legwork, working full time, running from government building to get this stamp and then get this approved. And it's like there's always this chicken before the egg problem in China, where you can't register a business until you have a full-on office rented out for the business. It's like, where is your business? You can't get a business license unless you have a business. But you can't do business unless you have a business license. And so everything, like, you've got to find ways around it. I don't know if they're the most kosher ways. I don't want to get too much into that in case they're listening to this. But at the end of 9 months, this agent that I hired, she comes to me and she's like, you know what? We made a mistake. You can't do this because you're a foreigner. So all this 9 months of work is completely useless. She's like, why don't you just have a Chinese person do it? So we're back to square one, and I look around and I'm like, who's the Chinese person I trust the most? The girl I'm sleeping with, this girl I was dating. And I went and sat down with her and I'm like, hey, we need to talk. Do you mind if I register a business in your name? And she was okay with that. But the second we go to the government building and the pen hits the paper, everything in our relationship changed. And that was one of the first big lessons I learned in business, is never to mix romance and business.
I was going to ask that. It sounds like you've you've learned quite a few lessons over the years. That was the first one.
Oh my God. Yeah. When you don't go to college, man, you got to learn this stuff the hard way.
Isn't that the truth? I at the time I had in a parallel to you at the time I was in Guatemala importing coffee into the U.S. And
no way.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the first coffee load, 500 pounds. I'm trying to get it to California. It's in Miami, and I get pulled in. And it's so long ago that I'm trying to remember which service. I believe it was the DEA, and they said, "Hey, you're a 19-year-old young white guy. You've got like all these stories of you going through Central America, and like now we've got coffee coming in." And so like they flagged it and they wanted to ship it, but it was all of the up and up. Coffee is a tight margin. Maybe some of the. Yeah. So, but that was a real fun experience. It's or at least an experience that gives you a story, right?
Yeah, that's wild. My first shipment of wine, and my only shipment, that's how the business went.
Sure.
I spent all this time just trying to I was thinking really big. What would the company do if it was really big? Why would I hire somebody to import my own wine when I could just get the importer's license and do it all myself? I'm thinking like if I'm $100 million company before I've sold one bottle. That's a big mistake. So I'm trying to do all this, just wasted a ton of time trying to get import-export permits. And I end up just saying, screw this. Like, this is terrible. This is the worst experience ever. I'll just find somebody on Chinese Craigslist to import this wine. And I found this, I don't know if shady is the right word, but I found this importing company in Shenzhen. And I was like, all right, we agreed on a price per bottle, and they were going to import the wine for me. I didn't want to ask any questions to how they were going to do it, but they had a plan. And I bought all this wine, and like it had arrived, and I'm like, where's the wine, guys? Where's the wine? A week passes, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Where's the wine, guys? What's going on with my wine? And I start losing it. And I go to Shenzhen to find them, and they kept saying oh yeah, it's on its way. It's just a little delayed. Go there, and finally they're like, okay, it's come in. It's in this warehouse. And we go to this warehouse at night, and there are cardboard boxes of wine, 12 in a case. Every case is just covered in mud. And I'm like, what's going on, guys? It obviously wasn't packaged with the mud on it. Where did the mud come from? And they're like, well, they had to get it under the fence. And that's all I speak to that effect, but it's pretty interesting.
I hear you though. Like international shipping and even domestic shipping, is a sea of headaches. I was part of a team one time. We were shipping chocolate, and it was the first time the company I was working for was mainly doing cycling and that kind of stuff. And it was a foray into chocolate, which is another story in itself. But nobody thought, hey, the chocolate would melt if it was exposed to real high.
Shit.
So it arrived at our warehouse as one solid blob of units.
Man. That's rough.
But now, so how have you learned over time to it sounds like maybe scale with the business you're in or scale with the units that you're doing?
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway from that business was like you said, just take it one step at a time. Like, you don't need to have all these business licenses to sell one bottle of wine, or to maybe like see if people would even be interested in it first. But really the biggest takeaway was to do things for love and not for money. Because at the time, I didn't know anything about wine. I didn't care about wine. I grew up never drinking. I don't like to drink today. And so I'm selling this product I don't believe in, I don't know about, and I don't care about. And it just led to this massive burnout. It's kind of just spinning my wheels like, oh, try and sell some wine today and drink with these people and do something I hate. So moving forward, it was always like, what do I love? And how can I make a business out of that one step at a time? People always ask, well, how do you start a business? Like, I don't know what to do. And like, you don't have to know everything. That's the beauty of it. Like, but you could probably figure out one step to get you closer from where you are now to wherever you want to go. Like, maybe it's coming up with a name for your business, making a prototype of the product, and just get one step at a time, and then you're there.
I like it. One step at a time, and don't reinvent the wheel, right?
Amen. Yeah.
Now, you walked away, or at some point, I guess, exited this wine business that is, you've maybe learned a lot. It's great life lessons, but it sounds like was a bit of a flop, which is a rough but common thing for entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. Is your mindset at any time, hey, I'm overwhelmed and I need to go back and maybe start living a more traditional life, get a degree, go down the job route?
I ask that question to myself almost every day.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. It is loaded with challenges, and every single day you might be asking yourself questions like that. Like, what if I had just stayed with my job, done this stable thing, and collected my paycheck? I'd have none of the shit to worry about, none of the debt, none of the whatever, but also none of the freedom, none of that sense of like I did it. So, to answer your question, to this date, I probably would have made more money if I just stuck with a normal job, to be honest. I'm just good at doing jobs, but I wouldn't be as happy as I am today. And I certainly wouldn't be as capable of handling anything that's thrown my way.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things as you've talked about. It just sounds like you are somebody who thrives at solving any sort of problem. Whatever it is, you're just going to jump in. And I think that it sounds like that's a pretty big deviation, perhaps from a more traditional career path where you'd have to stay in your lane.
Yeah, problem solving is a muscle for sure. So it's like, put yourself in those situations, just like with the coffee. That's a pretty big problem when the DEA's on your ass for a coffee shipment. You didn't know how to deal with it. And now next time you do coffee, I'm sure you know exactly what to do. So everybody out there, like, go out and challenge yourself. Go out and do the things you're afraid of, because you're building that muscle. It's like, okay, I handled the DEA. What's next? What country am I going to take on next? We're going to do coffee, or we're going to do cocaine, man? Which one is it? That sounded really weird with the energy. I'm not on it, by the way.
No worries. You're a high energy guy. And maybe that business would still be around if I was doing more illicit stuff, but, or I'd be in jail.
You might not be.
That's true. That's true. Right. It all worked out. A lot of life lessons taught. Now, moving from the wine, how long was it till you had this idea to do bicycles?
So between wine and bicycles, actually my mentor reached out to me again a couple times. He's like, hey, I've got this fuel supplier, because he did the private airports in California. this fuel supplier is trying to break into China and they need a guy. Like, why don't you talk to them? And I interviewed with these people in Beijing and basically kind of got this job where like I'm supposed to bring their company into China. It sounded just like, this is what I'm here for, right? I love airplanes. China's kind of my thing. And ended up going back to Dallas, Texas, which is where their headquarters were. It was not the job I was expecting. They kind of like found this role for me where I was doing fuel automation technology and installing it in airports and training up the fuelers to, save fuel for airlines or whatever. And I killed it. I loved it. Like, it was fun, but I didn't spend 5 years in China to do this. So I ended up back in China with them, really pushing like, get me a China, guys. Let me go loose. And the government was like, no, you're not going to sell your fuel in China. Basically, that was our job every day, was like, let's try something. And the government did not like that. So while I was doing that, I started my second business because I was going to the gym and I couldn't find good protein in China. And I found a raw whey protein ingredient and I was like, this tastes like butt. It's gross. Started mixing that with like cocoa powder and then sugar and then stevia, and people are like, hey, what is that? What are you drinking in the gym? And that's when I realized I'm not the only one with this problem. So I quit my job and I started a nutrition supplements company making like natural protein. It's really good protein. And that was cool. But in the same month, I met this dude on Airbnb who stayed at my Beijing Airbnb, and I gave him my motorcycle to cruise around the city. He comes back. His name was Pete. He's a really cool guy, really wild guy. We got along. He's like, dude, there's electric scooters everywhere here in China. Why don't we sell these to the West? And then I'm looking back at my history, bicycles. I had tried my first e-bike in the U.S. when I was working for the aviation company. But that e-bike was $7,000. And all the other e-bikes were ugly as hell. It's big batteries, wires everywhere. I'm like, dude, what if we could build an e-bike that looks good and sell it for $1,000 or something like that? That would just absolutely kill. And so we went around looking for factories to find one of those e-bikes, and there was just nothing like it. We thought we could just, slap a label on something, but we found a good motor at this one place. We found a cool battery at this other place. And then we found a factory that was like, yeah, we'll build any bike you want. And we committed to this thing. We shook hands, said, hey, let's go crazy. And we built like 6 prototypes or something, these different e-bikes. A year and a half later, launched them on IndieGoGo, and it just blew up for us. That was the start of the company.
Wow. There's a lot there to unpack. That's quite a journey. One of the things, though, that I noticed is that moving from wine to nutritional supplements and bicycles is that you definitely took your own advice of moving to something that it sounds like you love and you're interested in. How did you start cycling and getting interested in bicycles? Has this been a lifelong passion, or how did that start?
It started when I was 2 years old, and my parents gave me my fire bike for Christmas. I had this little bike and it had flames on the side, and it was sick. And I just loved riding that thing around. It's like when you get your first bike, it's like you're free. You can go anywhere you want on this thing. And so I, back in the day when kids could walk to school without getting kidnapped or whatever, we just ride our bikes every day to school, and we'd go ride them behind the school and take them off jumps and stuff. And I just loved cycling. Got into it some more in college. I lived in like Newport Beach, and I'd ride 10, 15 miles to school every day. I loved the exercise. But then in China, when I was living in the island, I got this bike for my then girlfriend, who the business was registered under, for Valentine's Day. I was like, hey, here's this bike. And I got one for myself too. And a big popular thing to do was ride your bikes around this 500-mile island. We get one day into this thing. We're in the tent the next morning. She's like, oh, I can't move. Like, I can't do this. And we had, 5 days of riding ahead of us. And So we go to the bus stop with the bikes and, take the wheels off, put her bike in the bus. And I was like, all right, I'll see you in a week. And I had to make the tough choice, man. I don't back down. I had to go on solo. And it was probably not the best decision for my relationship or my body because it was brutal, dude. I just wanted to get back to work kind of in a hurry and slang some more wine. So I was trying to just make time on this thing. I had no company with me, and I'd be riding 16 hours a day, 100 plus miles every day, and just killing myself. By the end of this thing, well, in the middle, I did have one beach day, and it was amazing. Like, the beach was so beautiful. And I'm like, wow, when you're not on the bike and you're enjoying the sights, this is incredible. Then I get back on the bike, and I'm trying to make time, and a typhoon hits the island.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of typhoons there. Typhoon hits, and I swear it's just like pelting down rain the whole time. So much rain, and the wind is blowing so hard that I swear I was going backwards at some points. And I'm just trying to get home at this point, dude. I'm screaming at the gods for mercy. I'm crying. Like, my legs are all broken out and sores and stuff. And I'm on the highway, a Chinese highway in a typhoon with no helmet on with this bike. Nightfall comes. And I'm like, I got to get off this thing. I don't want to get killed in the dark here. And I drag my bike up this embankment. It's the only place that looks like halfway decent. I couldn't even get to an exit on time. Drag my bike up the embankment, pitch a tent in a banana forest. And I crawl into my tent, and it's still just pouring down rain. And because it's a banana forest, you kind of have like this concave thing where I'm at, and it just fills up with water. I'm deep in like 4 inches of water, just sitting there like crying, miserable. I can't sleep. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Why did I come on this trip? Why did I ditch my girlfriend? I could be holding this girl in bed right now, laughing. And I'm here just dying. I probably lost about 10 pounds already of hard work in the gym. And I said to myself, like, this is it, dude. Never again are you going to ride a long distance on a bicycle. This makes no sense. Like, the beach day was fun, but you could have got there way faster on a motorcycle. And I vowed then, like, if I do another trip, it's going to be on the motorcycle. And I got back and just started riding a motorcycle more. Loved it. It's great. Love motorcycles. Love going fast. It wasn't until later when I had the e-bike experience in America where it's like, damn, this would have been amazing. Kelsey could have kept up. We could have done this trip together, had fun, and really just enjoyed it, because there's a point of diminishing returns when you ride a bike, and that's, for most people, it's like an hour, 30 minutes, an hour, and you're like, hey, that's good, man. That's good. So you can go a lot further on an e-bike.
I hear you. Wow. So it sounds like maybe that relationship was maybe not meant to last, given the fact that you that you separated mid-trip.
It was doomed, man. It was doomed from the start.
That's really cool though, that you went for that 500-mile journey. I did a few years back. I had the chance, my buddy and I, and maybe it's better that I didn't take my girlfriend at the time. We did the Colorado Trail. So similar style. It's off-road, but it's around the 500 miles. It actually took us 2 weeks though, not 5 days. High altitude, lots of terrain. And like you, I ended up losing a pound a day. We were just pushing so hard. So it's quite an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have planned that out in terms of, like, you were prepared to camp, prepared to cycle tour, kind of had all the gear ready, or are you kind of like a guy who just says, let's go for it?
Yeah, I didn't have any like stops planned. When I travel, I'm not a big planner. Like, I don't even like booking hotels. I love just grabbing a backpack and like, hey, figure out where I land. Ideally, maybe I'll find some cute chick there and do the old Tinder hotel. But I had a tent. I had the gear that I needed, and with that, like, I'm happy. I'll pitch this tent anywhere and just go.
Gotcha. Okay, and so that's a really cool story, and it kind of feeds into the impetus for maybe why electric bikes are so important in your ecosphere, I guess is the right way to say it. Now, once you had the bike parted together, I guess let's talk a little bit about the success of your first campaign and how it just took off.
Yeah. So So we'd been working on these prototypes for a while, and then it was in November or December of 2015 when Pete kind of moved back to China. We got really serious about this launch. We started, we were doing a lot of studying. What was out there, who's selling what, how are they selling it. Initially, we were just going to make a website and like build a few bikes and then try and stock them and sell them and do that. But then I found IndieGoGo. I found another e-bike called, I think I found a Saunders bike. It was a fat tire bike, and they had sold $5 million worth of bikes where they pre-sold it on IndieGoGo and then built them and then shipped them. I'm like, wow, like that's cool. That's a lot of sales in a short amount of time and without having to take on an inventory burden. And so that became our strategy. Like, let's build up for an IndieGoGo launch. Let's see how other people are doing successful launches. What have other people done? And how can we do it like that? And we just, like you said, didn't reinvent the wheel, figure out what other people are doing, tried our best. And we ended up launching in March of 2016. It did like 100K on the first day. And we're like, all right, we're in business, man. And it was just a grind every single day to get the word out more and move more of those bikes.
And now, as you've moved into the future and now have done several like immensely successful IndieGoGo campaigns, one of my questions is, it's almost like it's amazing to have that level of success, but I imagine it's a bit of a dual-edged sword because you're giving product at a discount, and often, as I've talked to some other entrepreneurs, often at cost. And so while you're building maybe a brand, you're not necessarily, it takes a bit more to stabilize within the industry. What's your take on that?
Man, that one went right to the heart.
Okay.
Because people, especially our customers, they'll see like the amount of money we raised. And They're like, you have $13 million. Why don't you just give me a free bike? And I'm like, well, that's not exactly how it works because IndieGoGo took 8% of that. And then we took the rest of the money. We gave it to our suppliers. We paid our staff. We paid our engineers to develop these bikes. Then we've got to pay to ship them from China. We've got to pay import duties. We've got to pay to warehouse them. We've got to pay to ship them to your door. And then we've got to support them for the rest of the working life of the product. And somehow that money just disappears along the way. But to this day, we have sold a decent amount of product. We have not made a lot of profit yet. I'm sure it will come, but it's really just been about it was never about the money for me. Absolutely, I want to be financially successful, and more importantly, I want our team to be absolutely killing it and be the highest paid people in the market. We're not there yet, but I want us to get there. But it's like, let's just build the most awesome bikes we can and share them with people. And if we do that and achieve that, I know the financial success will follow. And we haven't been the smartest about managing everything along the way, but we've certainly learned to be better, and we're striving to improve every single day.
Now, I guess I'm happy. Well, I'm glad that I hit the nail on the head. I feel your pain, I guess, with the I've been in the bike industry for about 20 years now, and I know the margins on bikes are thin, and the margins on e-bikes are razor thin. Is perhaps the polite way to say it. But the Babymaker specifically was one of the most successful IndieGoGos of all time. What did it feel like to have that level of success?
It was, oh man, it was incredible. Especially it's about contrast, right? So like when you take a warm shower and you get out of the warm shower, it's like you don't want to go outside of your shower. So they're like, I want to stay in here where it's warm and dry off with the door closed. But when you take a cold shower, just all cold all the way, you want that shower to end. You're like, I'm done with this thing. I'm getting out of the shower into the warm air. And contrast is a really important experience. And so before the Babymaker campaign, we were having some tough times as a business. We had not managed our supply chain properly. We had big delays on products, and we had gone like 6-9 months without product to sell. We had zero product to sell. We still had staff and we're still supporting everything. So we were burning a lot of cash here with no product to sell. And in 2019, we got to a point where like Pete and I were like, dude, there's no money in the bank. I don't know how we're going to make payroll next, a month or two. How are we going to buy new product? And that was the do or die moment where it's like, some ideas was like, well, let's declare bankruptcy. Let's get out of this thing. We had a good run and figure out what to do. And the other idea was, no, let's lean in and let's just go hard and give it everything we've got. We're gonna in Chinese they call it the mai guo zha tie, which means you're gonna sell the pots and break down the iron, which is like let's we don't even need to eat. We're gonna build swords out of this shit and fight. And that's what we did. I moved out of I was renting an apartment in San Diego, moved out of that, and I got this Sprinter van to move into it, live at the office, packed it full of Babymakers, and I just started driving that around, talking to customers, getting their feedback, filming videos, and really hyping the product. That was the all-in moment. And when
real grassroots.
Grassroots. We launched that thing. We put everything we had into the marketing beforehand, the launch, and day one it did $1 million. And it was like that moment when everything pays off. It was indescribable.
No kidding. And for those who don't know, what is the premise of the Babymaker as a bike design, and maybe how is it different than other products on the market? Great
question. So the Babymaker it looks like a fixie. It's a really clean line bike. I'm looking at a picture of it on my screensaver right now. It's pretty cool. But you can't tell it's an e-bike. It looks like your classic fixie design, just a straight up front triangle, really clean lines. And the battery is hidden inside the frame. The rear motor is just really, really small. So when you're riding this thing around, nobody knows you're riding an e-bike, but you're flying past at 25 miles an hour. It catches a ton of attention. People are like, damn, that's a beautiful bike. And they don't even know it's electric. So it's just the best of both worlds. It's super simple. There's no gears to shift. So a lot of like people who are, they don't want to fuss with gears, or they don't know how to use them. They don't want to mess with it. Just get on and ride kind of people. This is a great option for them. It's got a carbon Gates belt drive. So there's no greasy chain to mess with. It's like zero maintenance. You just get the bike and you ride it and you have fun. And that's kind of what we're about. Like, just go have some fun. Get outside.
I'm curious to hear, now that you've had a bit more success and are now on the Babymaker 2, as well as a kind of a small fleet or growing fleet of bikes. Are you finding that it sounds like the intended customer was maybe somebody who was not as familiar with cycling or the market. Maybe they were buying their first bike or just jumping into it. But also reading a lot of the reviews, it sounds like many people this might be their third or fourth bike, using it as a commuter. Are you finding that there's a specific segment that's ending up being your primary customer, or is it just all over the map?
That's a great question. So when we first started, we didn't think about any of that. The question was, what would be the most awesome bike that we would love to ride? Let's build the best bike that we can. Like, this thing's awesome. It looks cool. It's the best performance we can do at a great price. We went at the time, nobody was doing hydraulic brakes. We did hydraulic brakes. Very few people did mid motors. There was like one or two mid motors. We did a mid motor. We did the highest capacity lithium ion battery cells you could do. When at the time people were using these Chinese cells that would catch on fire. And we just packed this thing with everything we could get. It's like, this is the best bike you can make right now. And that's been what it's about for every model that we make. Like, what can we do that's the best product, the most fun? Like, it doesn't need to cost 15 grand, but you don't want the cheapest shit that you can find on a bike and just go on price. We don't want to be the Walmart bike. We want to be something that's sexy, that you are proud to ride, because that's what was missing when we started. It's just like, these are ugly bikes. They're not cool. Let's make it cool. Let's make it fun and make it perform like crazy.
I like it, cool and fun. I think having us talk together is a lot of fun. You could definitely tell my background and my thought process is perhaps very analytical, and I like
Uh-huh.
how yours is enthusiastic and just jumping in.
Hell yeah, yeah. I can tell you've been doing this a long time, and I love that. And the questions are very very fun to answer.
Now, I'm curious, moving from the Babymaker the Babymaker to the Babymaker 2, what's an aspect of the bike that you felt like you really got right in terms of improvement?
Um, we did increase the battery capacity. We changed up how the handlebars were. So initially with the Babymaker 1, we had the drop down bars, like those classic road bike, drop style bars, and then we had bullhorn bars, and both of those were cool, but not too many people opted for the drop down bars. And then the ones that did, like, we had some people that had challenges like figuring out how to use them and weren't used to them. And so for the Babymaker 2, it was like, let's just simplify this. Let's just go with one straight bar. Everybody gets the same bar, and people like it. Like, it's a cooler bar. It's a bit wider than the bullhorns. There's nothing to mess with. So it's about kind of like cleaning up and simplifying what was already a really like simple, clean product a little bit further. We increased like the stem length too, so you got a little bit more reach, but just taking what riders tell us and using that to develop the next iteration. And we're always doing that. We're always listening to our customers, like, what do people want? What do people really want? And what do people want, but they don't even know that they want it yet?
I like that, and I was actually going to follow up with that question of how much, because it just from watching your YouTube videos and kind of reading on the website, the FLX community of riders is very passionate. They love the bike. They're also very vocal, or at least not shy about being vocal, it sounds like. How much do you take their feedback when developing a new product?
Like, all the feedback is super valuable. Whether we're going to act on it or not is a different question. We get people all the time saying, why don't you make it charge the battery while you're pedaling it? And it's like, okay, well, that breaks the laws of physics, so we can't do that. But it's great feedback. We understand, okay, maybe that person wants more range or even more sustainable product. So battery capacity is very important to them. Maybe we can do something in that direction. The feedback is very important. For example, our original Blade product, it was like one of the first mountain bikes out there with 1,000-watt Bafang Ultra motor. It was just an absolute beast of a mountain bike. Biggest battery you could get, all premium components, like beautiful. It's a RockShox Pike shock in the front. And it was a ton of fun to ride, but there's so much power coming through that 1,000-watt mid motor that it would just eat up the cassettes pretty quickly. You ride it 3 or 6 months and need a new cassette, new chain. And we got a really nice drivetrain, so each time you do that, it's like another $400 cassette. And that was feedback from the riders, like, hey, we're eating this bike up. So the next version of the Blade, we put the roll-off speed hub on it, which is just a bulletproof, internally geared hub in the back there. It's a $1,400 hub, but it's gonna last for the life of the bike. It's really cool. It's a great experience. Another example was our first bike. The motors on those, we had these cool Buffelli round mid motors, but those have some internal gears that were made from nylon, and those gears would break. Not all of them, but it was like a 3% fail rate on those gears, which is a lot more than we wanted. And so we went from that. We developed with that motor factory these new gears that were stronger. And then eventually, people were still complaining. So we're like, all right, that's it for this motor. We need something else. And we moved on to Bafang motors, kind of exclusively from there on, from our second generation products up until now. And they've been amazing.
I like it. I helped a buddy years ago convert his like standard like rigid bike. You just want it as a commuter, and we put the Bafang 1,000-watt motor on it. And man, that thing is scary fast, is how I would describe it. 35 miles uphill, the whole thing. So
Oh my God.
It was back in the unrestricted days, you know, no limiter, nothing like that. So
That's wild. Hey, I love those days.
now, I guess, will there be a Babymaker 3? And how's the developing process going?
I can't comment on that.
Okay. Got to keep it close to the chest. Huh? I figured I would be remiss if I didn't ask.
I will say that we're always working on new stuff. That's about as much as I can say.
Let me ask it another way. What's something that you still feel you haven't dialed in the Babymaker 2, or where there's room for improvement?
I think like something that's always going to be a theme for e-bikes is increasing the capabilities. So range is one thing. Battery technology is always getting better. We always want to be at the forefront of that and just giving people the absolute best they can, because any bike is a trade-off, right? If you go and make the battery bigger, well, it's going to weigh more. If you make it faster, again, it's going to weigh more. It's going to have a bigger motor. You're going to have less range. And so choosing those trade-offs is one thing. Like, how are you going to deal with those? And then also finding that technology that changes it from a trade-off to like, hey, this is the same size battery cell, but it's got more capacity. And that's always developing.
And then I guess I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You're kind of in many ways bucking a lot of the traditional industry patterns. For example, the Babymaker is made in many available colors. Is that a conscious choice? What's the marketing and strategy behind that?
Yeah, the initial Babymaker we did it in 6 colors, and it's kind of like let's make it fun. One thing that was inspiration for that was Apple when they first released the iMac, their first colorful iMac. I don't know if you remember these posters, but they had like 5 or 6 iMacs in a flower pattern, and they were all different colors. And it was really beautiful. It's the first time computers had did that, and we're like, can we do that with bikes? We're not the first person to paint a bike, not trying to claim that, but we just wanted to have fun with it and give people options. I wanted a pink bike myself. I just thought it'd be super cool, eye-catching, because you don't see many people riding pink bikes, especially not dudes. And I'm like, I want to be the dude with a pink Babymaker riding around the city. And that was my favorite color.
It definitely stands out. And I guess to preface that with context, because I know my audience is it's a pretty wide group. Traditionally, when you're buying a bike, it's almost like you get the component spec that you want, and then the color is whatever the color is. It's kind of you get what you get, has been my previous experience.
Color's been such a big factor for our customers. Like, a lot of people, they won't buy it if it's not the color that they want. And it's always, this is again a big trade-off in the bike industry, because each color, you've got an additional SKU. But in our case, for the Babymaker, each color was 4 additional SKUs, because we had 2 sizes, 2 handlebar types, and I think we had even more than that. 2 size, 2 handlebar types. Oh, and then base or pro. So every color was 8 additional SKUs. We had 6 colors. I think it was actually 96 SKUs of bikes in our first launch, and managing the production of that, where all of these bikes were already ordered, turned out to be a huge handful. And one frame gets scratched, and now somebody's like, well, now your order is going to be delayed until we build another orange 19-inch pro frame. So that was challenging. And when we went from the Babymaker 1 to 2, that was a big factor, because we had delays in our production from the 1. It's like, how can we streamline this? We dropped the options. We dropped the 2 handlebar options. We went down to 4 colors. So we got it down to like 24, 16 SKUs. And we're able to produce that and deliver them a lot faster to people, almost all of them on time for the 2.
That's good to hear. And I definitely feel your pain, and would speak up for you on that end. Is like matching customer expectation with production reality is a never ending problem on that end. Let's talk a little bit. I know we're running short on time, but I do want to get into the industry response. I guess, in all fairness, I would say from the traditional industry, it started off a little icy, but it seems like you're winning them over or slowly turning the tide. Is that your feeling? Is that your sense?
I hope so. I don't really know. We've always been outsiders to the industry. Um, it's kind of a competitive industry. There's only a certain number of people that are gonna buy bikes. At least that's what a lot of people think. And especially when we launched the Babymaker and it started getting successful, it's kind of like, you're at the bar and you see one guy and all the girls are talking to him and you're like, fuck this guy, man, he's a loser, like, look at him. That's kind of what went on with the Babymaker. Whereas a lot of people were like happy for your success, but then there's some people that are like, they just try and nitpick everything they can, and that's cool. That's fine. We thought it was hilarious, especially naming the product the Babymaker. Like, there was no shortage of subject matter to make fun of with that bike, but all of that was good for it. Like, people were talking about the bike. These people are doing it different. They have a goofy name on the bike. Some people don't like them, but other people do. And so we don't want to shy away from like making waves in the industry. You're going to love us or you're going to hate us, but you can't ignore us.
I love it. Beating to your own drum, if you will. Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure to have the chance to talk to you. Thank you. And I also want to say I'm excited to be joining the team and working with you. Any closing thoughts?
Eric, no, this has been an absolute pleasure. Great interview, and can't wait to have you start here on Saturday. Welcome to the team and the mission. And there's some really exciting stuff coming up that we haven't told you about, but really big moves coming up for the company. So strap on that seatbelt.